My concern is that corporations, their goal is to continually make more money. Every year they'd like to make more money than the last. This year for the pharmaceutical companies, it's been an insanely profitable year because of the vaccines. I have a real concern, I wonder if you share this concern, that they're going to try to continue to make the same amount of money. And the best way to do that is to continue to encourage people to be vaccinated and to create new vaccines, even if they're not necessarily the right thing to do.
Yep, we're going to do another video talking about someone who's got one of the biggest audiences in the world and what he's saying in regards to the global pandemic we've all been enduring for the last 2 years. And so I thought we should do a deeper dive into the 2 points Joe Rogan was making there. One point being about the profits of pharmaceutical companies and the other point being about needing booster shots. And I thought I would include relevant parts of a discussion between Emma Vigeland and a guest that was on the Majority Report, who was there to talk about his recent book titled Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers: Accountability for Those Who Caused the Crisis. So let's hear what John Nichols had to say.
We poured money into research and development that helped the pharmaceutical companies to develop the vaccine.
Yep, first very important thing I think needs to be pointed out is these pharmaceutical companies received a lot of money from the government at the start of the pandemic to get this all up and going. And so keep that in mind, that governments paid for the research and development, and they also had to then buy the vaccines.
They didn't run into the lab themselves and come up with this. They were part of a global effort to find a response to this global pandemic.
And really just to emphasize the point of global pandemic, and so governments knew that they had to make the vaccine accessible to as many people as possible. That's why you don't have to pay for it. It was already paid for by the government twice if you want to count the research and development and the actual order of the vaccines. But you as an individual, you don't have to pay for it. And so you know what that means, right? Even if you don't get vaccinated, the pharmaceutical company still made their money. It doesn't matter to them whether it gets used or not because it's already paid for. Okay, and now to start to work in the point of needing booster shots. You see, if the virus is allowed to spread amongst large populations of unvaccinated people, that's where it's got the most likeliness to mutate into different variants, which could possibly be a variant that will cause us to need booster shots or might even make the vaccines we have completely ineffective and we need to start again from square one. And now there's another aspect of the profits of pharmaceutical companies that will lead us into talking about why there would be large populations of unvaccinated people.
We need to waive the patents. I mean, that is the number one thing that we need to do in order to and someone like Bill Gates is the leading voice behind not doing so.
See, isn't that some good news? If you've made a fuck Bill Gates sign, you can still use it.
These vaccines, as you say, the recipe for these vaccines to be shared would be helpful. Do you think that would be helpful?
No.
Alright, and I will spell it out for people. With these pharmaceutical companies having the patent for the vaccines, they are making it so there's only limited options on where to get the vaccines from, and so they will reap all the profits. Which is why there are nations that might not be as wealthy as, let's say, the United States, that can't afford enough doses for their people. And even if they have the means to produce their own, they may not be able to because these other pharmaceutical companies own the patent on it. And now the next point is mainly to go back to my last video.
You know, it's one thing to understand. Pharmaceutical companies don't like doing vaccines. They much prefer a drug that you can get a prescription to and you have to take every day for the rest of your life because they can really make a lot of assured ongoing money from that.
I have, of course, for years, a year and a half, not years, been taking hydroxychloroquine from the beginning with zinc.
So I really think I'm making a good case for anti-vaxxers not really being against Big Pharma. If anything, they are probably one of the biggest helpers to Big Pharma. We'll list off a couple of reasons. Because even if you don't get vaccinated, they still got paid for that vaccine. And I'm sure there's some pharmaceutical companies that really benefited from unvaccinated people, like Regeneron, the monoclonal antibody manufacturers, and no doubt pharmaceutical companies that made particular antiparasitics probably saw a spike in sales. And then simply put, the more unvaccinated people there are, whether it be by choice or lack of accessibility, they are the populations where it's more likely for the virus to spread and possibly mutate into a variant which will cause us to need a whole new round of vaccines. And so back to the concern Joe Rogan expresses at the start of this video of the insane profits made by pharmaceutical companies being driven by the vaccines, and so to keep their profits up, they're going to keep pushing more and more vaccines for the coronavirus. Well, I hope from watching this video you can see that one of the best ways to combat that will be trying to make sure there's no more mutations, causing us to need a whole round of booster shots, which can be done by getting vaccinated yourself, and arguing that companies should not have the patent on the vaccines and it should be accessible to everyone on the fucking planet.
Who owns the patent on this vaccine? Well, the people, I would say. There is no patent. This is... Could you patent the sun?